Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about that terrible YouTuber turned late night host named Lilly Singh. Lilly has been on our radar for a couple of years now, far before she ever had a late night show on NBC. In fact, she's been very famous on this YouTube platform for many years, but mostly we covered her because she has a very left-leaning SJW take on things, and ever so often she sprinkles in some social commentary and some political videos that were just awful. For example, we covered her once where she had this video in front of a map and she was talking about how certain places were racist and certain places weren't. And of course, she was leaning towards her favored religion in certain places on the map that she of course supported. She likes to support minorities, well, minorities in her and our country. Lilly Singh's a Canadian, by the way. She's a very Canadian, typical Canadian, because she's very leftist, very SJW, and very anti-white. That's the trend that goes on in that socialist country. And Lilly's been trying to bring it to our country for a good long while now, and we've covered her videos time and time again. And in addition, we've covered her new show that's been on NBC. It's a late night show. It's called A Little Late with Lilly Singh. It's very cringy, very terrible, hard to watch, and just one of the worst shows of all time, because not only is Lilly Singh like incredibly unfunny, not only is she so bad at humor, so bad at entertaining and just holding the attention of an audience, but on top of that, she sprinkles in this dumb SJW stuff all the time. The first thing that came up with her show was when she said she was like this lesbian, bisexual woman of color. She said she was a bisexual woman of color and the first one to host a late night show. And that was her big claim to fame. Like, that's all she had going for her was a label that's just kind of misleading too, because we've never seen her date or be with a woman. She just claims to be bi, even though there's no proof of that. There's no way to tell if that's true. She just says she's bi, and we're supposed to give her extra special attention, which is probably why she's coming out with it so late in her life. I mean, this chick's almost 30, and all of a sudden she's coming out as bi right before she opens up a TV show. Seems a little fishy to me. Not saying she is lying, but we do need to see some kind of proof or verification. Otherwise, I mean, who else could be bi? I could be bi, she could be trans, anyone could be anything if we just say that. I mean, do we really just want to take her word for it? But apparently many people have, and her show has been going on for almost a year now. I think it's been less than that, but she's been having episodes sporadically for around that time. And now the new update and what we're talking about today is, for some godforsaken reason, they renewed her show despite it being really terrible, terribly reviewed, having awful responses. We've done videos about it. Everyone has berated this show for a long time. I've really never met anyone that liked this show. I can't say there's anyone out there who's like a super fan. I guess maybe Lilly Singh crossed over a few of her fans from YouTube. A few young kids who watched her kind of like low IQ videos are still hooked on her from there. Maybe some people want to watch her show because she's kind of good looking. I mean, she used to be pretty. Now she kind of wears these big jackets and these big pantsuits that don't really look very flattering. I'm sure she's still got a good physique underneath, but I think it shows that she's going more and more left, because left people don't like to be pretty. They like to dress down and make their women look more like men, stuff like that. And that's just, that's besides the point. The main story today is Lilly Singh got renewed for a new season. I can't believe it. I'm honestly a little shocked, but at the same time, not completely surprised, because I mean, why did this show even happen anyway? It was just this bogus kind of like 1 a.m. slot. It's like a half-hour show on in the middle of the night. No one watched it before when it was hosted by Carson Daly, but at least Carson, he's not the worst guy. He's a likable host, maybe a little bland, a little boring, a little milquetoast, but I'll take that any day over some radical leftist who kind of bashes on whites, always making anti-white jokes, always going pro her preferred groups, pro alphabet, pro certain religions, anti other ones. You guys know the drill, and that was the basic premise for today's story. So now we're going to get to an article. Let's see a little more details, because I'm still a little surprised. Like I said, this show's coming back and it was never doing well. It never had good ratings, reviews. Everyone was against it. Even like people that might have liked Lilly Singh acknowledged how unfunny it was, but it got renewed anyway. And here's an article. Vulture has details. It says, Lilly Singh's late night show renewed at NBC by Meg Wright. This came out a few days ago. Very interesting, stunning development. So let's get into some details and talk about it more later. Lilly Singh's new late night show is sticking around at NBC. The network announced today that it's handed out a season 2 renewal for A Little Late with Lilly Singh which debuted its first season last September. Wow. It's only been like 6 months then. It feels like a year. It feels like it's been longer. I guess just when it's something this bad and this terrible to watch, it just drags. It drags real bad. Hosting my own late night show and interviewing guests from Malala Yousafzai to Snoop Dogg has been a fun ride for me, Singh said in a release. Okay, I don't even know who that Malala is. I'm not sure. I'm guessing it's some kind of like minority activist or something. Like I feel like she was listing a political person and an entertainment person. Obviously Snoop Dogg is the rapper. Obviously he would go on that show. He's a pretty big leftist. I love the guy. I love his music. I love some of his shows too. That cooking show he has with Martha Stewart is actually a lot of fun to watch. But, you know, these celebrities are very left-leaning. Snoop Dogg's a California boy. He's been growing up in that culture. It's hard to get out of it. I learned so much during this first year of creating the show from scratch, and I'm excited that A Little Late will return for a second season on NBC. NBC's EVP of late night programming, Katie Hockmeyer, called Singh an incredible talent in a statement and said the show has brought an expanding global audience to NBC, and we look forward to another season of her unique showmanship and style. Expanding global audience? What is this thing even talking about? Are they serious? Like, the ratings were down. Like, just because she's an Indian girl from Canada doesn't mean she's getting a global audience. Like, what? Because she's brown? Like, a bunch of people in Malaysia are going to watch now? I don't get it. I just highly doubt any of this is true. This is either exaggeration or some kind of made up stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't think a global audience is coming to NBC because of A Little Late with Lilly Singh. I think maybe a few of her fans are watching, and then the rest of us are hate watching, just waiting to see what she's going to say that's dumb next. I mean, she's been going off the rails for a while now. The show's kind of slowed down, and there wasn't really time to make a lot of episodes. A lot of these shows had to shut down because of the lockdowns and the pandemic and stuff. But yeah, Lilly Singh, she had a bad track record. She got caught with a tiny audience, fake laughs, bad jokes. She had to apologize to like Jessica Alba or something because of a bad form joke. And she's done just a lot of bad stuff. I mean, she had to apologize. She had to kind of refigure her show and rewrite things. And I mean, there was no good ratings. I don't get why. I mean, I guess they just have nothing better to refill this. They can't find a new host. I don't know why they want to double down on her, but it's kind of surprising still. Unlike the other late night shows, which have all pivoted to remote episodes this year due to the pandemic, A Little Late with Lilly Singh's episodes were taped in advance during a 3-month stretch last year beginning in September. It remains to be seen if NBC has the same plan for season 2 and when the series will return, but considering Singh came to NBC as a successful YouTuber, she already knows a thing or two about how remote episodes work. Okay, this is a comment on her being a former YouTuber, and I think this is a good time to point out the fact that YouTube just doesn't always translate to other mediums. These guys try to come out with movies sometimes, they try to make their shows, and it just doesn't pan out a lot. And I think that Lilly Singh is a good example of that, despite her getting propped up and renewed for a second season, not deserving it. I think that just goes to show how powerful identity politics and SJW stuff is. Like, she's a Canadian Indian minority YouTuber, bisexual, lesbian, alphabet, whatever. I mean, she's got all these identities. That's part of the sell for her. That's why she came out as Alphabet, like right before her show premiered. This is the pitch. This is like the Alphabet minority candidate. They wanted to diversify late night. That was another thing that we could get into. But let's first talk about the successful YouTube thing. These kinds of premises have failed before. Like, we've seen that Fred guy make movies. You know, Shane Dawson has tried to make movies. Like, it's very rare for a YouTuber to come out. And I know I fall into that category. I accept it, though. I'm not trying to make myself on a TV show or something. I mean, it's possible. I would love that. Who wouldn't want to work on a movie or something? But I'm not going to make some cringy, embarrassing take like Lilly Singh. Like, if she was smarter, she would have just stuck to YouTube. I mean, she was just a millionaire already. She was already getting tons of views. She could have retired retired and just stuck with her medium. But she tried to move on. I mean, that is a respectable kind of thing, sort of, if she was doing it right and not being this biased, terrible hater and all this anti-American stuff. Like, yeah, we could get behind that. But the fact that she's doing it in this way and the fact that she's got this unprecedented support from the network. I mean, normally when you're on a TV show, when you're working for like ABC, NBC, like these major networks, like that stuff is cutthroat. That stuff is, if you don't get the ratings, if you don't do well, like you're gone. Like your show's going to get one season. You could get your season cut short. Like typically it's way more hard for most people, but that just goes to show that these minorities are coddled. They don't have to compete on the fair spectrum. They're not there competing with everyone else fairly. Like they get special treatment, and this is what they want. This is what feminists like Lilly Singh want. They want that special treatment. They want to get propped up. They don't want to have to sacrifice anything, try harder, step up, change their ideas or their methods or whatever. They don't want to do that. And this is what's happened with this show and why it's been renewed. And despite her being a success on YouTube, she's a failure on television. And it's another YouTuber who's failed in another medium. I don't know of any that have really made it far into like TV or movies. I think it's happened, I'm sure. I know there's been some kind of cross play between, like, say, people have been on YouTube, like The Lonely Island was like a group that made videos for Saturday Night Live, and I think originally they had a few on YouTube. Like, things have propped up. Donald Glover is an example of someone who had a little bit on YouTube. Like, he started off with a few channels, and he's a funny comic, and then he ended up on 30 Rock and Community and have this whole big career of his own, and now he just kind of like, he doesn't really do YouTube anymore. I think he has his music videos on there. But the point is, it's very rare, especially when there's someone that's like big on YouTube first and tries to cross over. Like, it's different. It's just a different thing. And a lot of times there are these cringy, over-the-top comics like Lilly that just kind of like ham it up, like, look at my face. Like, they're always just making weird faces and like, It's like cartoon kiddie humor. It's like stuff you would see on the Looney Tunes or something back in the day. Three Stooges, like, punch yourself in the head, like, just like the worst kind of humor. And that's because YouTube has been geared towards kids for a long time. And then now for Lilly Singh to try to make it to late night, like, that's a big jump. Like, that's a big difference in there. Like, she's not making jokes for children anymore. And that's why I think she's failing in the ratings and reviews. But obviously she's still getting propped up by the company, and they still want to have their token minority host because, yeah, that brings us back to the whole late night wars thing, because late night comedy has been under attack. I don't really mind it because they're all terrible these days. Like, I don't watch any late night shows. I used to watch some stuff like Leno and Letterman back in the day when I was a kid, and I watched different things like different late night shows. I watched Jon Stewart on the Daily Show, but those guys are all retired. Those guys are all gone, and now we have a bunch of hacks who are like terrible at it. I mean, granted, those guys were political before, and they certainly had their liberal tendencies, but things were much more middle ground, like unbiased back then. The comedy would go both ways. They would make fun of both sides. And nowadays it's just left wingers all the way. Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, like the most radical leftists ever. They're just getting right in with it, right with the mainstream media. They never make fun of liberals. They're never ever going to be fair. All they do is rip on Trump. They lie about him. Jimmy Kimmel got caught making up stuff about VP Pence just a week ago. I mean, the list is endless, and that's why I say it's fine to take down that whole genre. But the problem is they go after it and they're like, oh, there's too many white dudes in late night comedy. Like, that's the thing that really irks us, and that's why Lilly Singh has come to be, because she's like this SJW, like we said. She's a feminist, a minority, an alphabet, like all that stuff, and that's why she's getting renewed. This is the answer to the question. Why is she getting renewed? It's because the late night guys are all a bunch of white dudes, and there's really nothing wrong with that inherently. We're in America. They're part of the majority. It makes sense for a lot of them to be on these late night shows. In addition, you could argue that these guys are funny, and you could say that, these kinds of dudes are just more funny and more apt to host a show like this. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like how girls can go to other jobs. Like, girls tend to be working in nursing fields and healthcare. They tend to be teachers. Guys tend to be more comics and doing stand-up and doing late night shows. That's just the way it is, but they don't want to accept that. The left can't stand men and white people being successful. They're very against us, so that's why they prop up people like Lilly Singh, even though she really doesn't deserve it. That about wraps up today's video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys comment your thoughts on everything below. Let me know what you think about Lilly, about her getting renewed, and this whole late night wars. Why is she even getting in there in the first place since her ratings and reviews have been so terrible? In addition, also hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. That helps us out a great bit. And until next time, you guys have a great day.